So ratios compares values by stating how much of one thing there is compared to another thing. So once again, I've given you a block. In this little block, you have 5 green blocks, 15 blue blocks, and another 5 green blocks. Or you can see it as a green row, a blue row, and an orange row. So let's have a look at what I say here. The square on the right is divided into 25 blocks, 5 green, 25 blue, and 5 orange. We can therefore say that there are 5 green blocks for, remember we're working with ratios, every 15 blue blocks and every 5 orange blocks. And if we write it as a ratio, we use a double point system. So we say 5 to, that's what it means, 5 to 15 to 5. That is the ratio of green to blue to orange blocks. If we add the numbers in the ratio together, sorry about that, guys. If we add the numbers in the ratio together, we get the total number of blocks. 5 plus 15 plus 5 is indeed 25. So now we get to something we call equivalent ratios. And if we look at the same square again, we can now say there is 1 green row for every 3 blue rows and every orange row. And that ratio we will write as 1 to 3 to 1. And so we can now see that 5 to 15 to 5, that is when we talk about the little blocks, is equivalent to 1 to 3 to 1, which is the rows. And when we write it mathematically, we can say that 5 to 15 to 5 is equivalent, and for equivalent we add another line on top of an equal sign, is equivalent to 1 to 3 to 1. Notice, and I think you've noticed it already, that if we divide all the numbers in the ratio by the same number, in this case 5, we get 1 to 3 to 1. And that is a rule. The rule says that multiplying or dividing every part of a ratio with the same number will give us an equivalent ratio. How do we apply it? Okay, first way we can apply it is by simplifying a large quantity. So here it says in a factory, there are 2,400 slices of white bread and 3,600 slices of brown bread. What is the ratio of white bread to brown bread? Well, we simply say it's 2,400 representing the white slices to 3,600. First thing we do is we divide both numbers by 100 by simply removing the zeros. And so we get the first equivalent fraction, which is 24 to 36. And because we know our times table, we can see that both those numbers is divisible by 12. And so if we divide 24 by 12, we get 2. If we divide 36 by 12, we get 3. And so we have a new equivalent ratio of 2 to 3. So what does that mean? It means that for every 2 slices of white bread, there are 3 slices of brown bread being baked in this factory. Next thing that we can do is we can determine the size of a job. There you say, see, one painter can paint 100 meters of a 2-kilometer road marking per day. How many painters are needed to complete the job in the same day? So the first thing we have to do, as we did with percentages and as we did with fractions, we must get to 1 unit. So we cannot work with 100 meter and kilometers. So we turn the kilometers into meters as well. So now we say he paints 100 meters of the total 2,000 meters. So, or 100 to 2,000. That's now in the same unit. So now we say how many painters will it take to complete the job in 1 day? Well, that's fine, because we have already now see that we can divide both numbers in the ratio with the 100, and so we get 1 to 20. So 20 painters is needed to complete the job in 1 day. Okay, there would be many other ways to do this, by the way. You could have simply said 2,000 meters divided by 100 meter gives me 20, and that'll be 20 painters as well. It is just because this question came up in this particular module that we did it like that. Remember, there are always more than one way to do a calculation. Next way, or the next way in which we can apply ratios, is to determine profit share. This is the common one that you will find in a test or an exam. So here it says, partners A and B has 3 times as many shares as D, while C has twice as much as D. If the profit is 123,750, calculate each partner's share of the profit. Okay, so every other part of the ratio is described in terms of D. Okay, so basically, if A and B both have 3 times as many as D, and D has 1 part, they will have 3 parts. If C has twice as much as D and D has 1 part, C will have 2 parts. So if you put it in a ratio, the ratio will be 3 to 3 to 2 to 1. They gave us the total profit share, or the total profit. The total profit was 123,750. Now go and look at all the parts of the ratio, and we go back to that very first slide under ratios, or the second slide, where we said that the parts of the ratio make up the entire thing. Okay, so how many parts are there here in total? Simple, we say 3 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 gives us 9 parts in total. Okay, so if those 9 parts add up to 123,750, and we divide that total by 9, we get 13,750. That is 1 part. Let's just admit somebody here. And we know that D has 1 part, so we know that D gets 13,750 Rand. We also know that C gets twice as much as D. So C gets 27,500 Rand. And we know that both A and B gets 3 times as much as D. So we can multiply that 13,750 with 3. And then we see that partners A and B each get 41,250. Okay. Please, guys, common question in the exam, this one. So make sure that you know how to do that. Okay, so now how do we turn a ratio into a fraction, or a fraction into a ratio? Let's look at the first one. If we turn ratios into fraction. So what do? We express the parts as a fraction of the total parts. So take, for instance, that ratio there of 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. If we add up all the parts of the ratio, we get the total number of parts, which is 14. Why? Because 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 5 is 10, plus 4 is 14. Then we express it as a fraction of the total. So we have 2 out of 14, 3 out of 14, 4 out of 14, and 5 out of 14. So each one of those parts of that ratio can be expressed as a separate fraction, as we've done there. When we do it the other way around, we turn a fraction into a ratio, we get the lowest common denominator, remembering that the denominator again is the bottom part of the fraction, the part under the line. And then we express the numerators as the fraction. Another way to say it would be to say that if all our denominators are the same, then the numerators can be expressed as a fraction. So there we have a half, a third, and a quarter. The lowest common denominator of 2, 3, and 4 is 12. You can test it. There is nothing else before that. It cannot be 8 because 3 does not go into 8. It cannot be 9 because neither 4 or 2 goes into 9. So it must be 12. Simple way of doing that would be just to say 4 times 3. So now we express all of these as fractions of 12 or as twelfths. And to go from 2 to 12, we have to multiply with 6. So the first half becomes 6 twelfths. To go from 3 to 12, we have to multiply by 4. So a third becomes 4 twelfths. And to go from 4 to 12, we have to multiply by 3. So a quarter becomes a third. And so those fractions can then be expressed in the ratio 6 to 4 to 3. Okay, let's apply this conversion. So here we see a father gives money to his sons, 2/5 to the one, 3/8 to the second, and the rest to the third. Okay, and now the question is, how much did the other two get? But look there, we are given the rest. We are told that the third one gets 4,050 Rand. What's the first thing we do? We find the LCD. Okay, 2/5 and 3/8. And the lowest common denominator there is 40. Another way of seeing it would simply be to multiply 8 times 5. So to move from 5 to 40, we have to multiply by 8. And 2 times 8 is 16. So 2/5 can also be expressed as 16/40. 3/8, to go from 8 to 40, we have to multiply by 5. 3 times 5 is 15, so 3/8 can be written as 15/40. Okay, now we must find the missing fraction. Okay, and how do we do that? Well, we start with the total. The total number of parts in this fraction would be 40 because that is our lowest common denominator. So 40 then minus 16 minus 15 will give us 9. Or if you had 40/40 minus 16/40 minus 15/40, you would have gotten 9/40. But remember, we can express the numerators as a ratio if the denominators are the same. So that's how we end up with 16 to 15 to 9. So what do? We find the value of one part and calculate the other parts. Now we know that the guy who in this ratio got 9 parts got 4,050 Rand. It was given to you there at the top. So now we say 4,050 divided by 9 gives me 450 Rand. That is the value of one part in this ratio. Okay, so now we can say 16 times 450 gives me 7,200, and 15 times 450 gives me 6,750. So now we know that the first son got 7,200, the second son got 6,750, and the youngest son got 4,050. This is clearly the way this father decided to distribute the money.